There's one question, though, that I came across a couple of times when I did a little bit of research for our conversation today, and that is the term of identity stitching.
Yeah.
And in a very superficial understanding, that could mean that you do identity stitching to find out who the person is you're talking to. So that would be like, okay, now I have learned that this is Jens, he lives in Düsseldorf, and he has obviously this amount of debt at this and that company. But is that what identity stitching means, or is that completely wrong?
It's partially, and it's inclusive of that. What I would say is, from my perspective, for us, identity resolution is understanding Jens in all the touch points. So, for example, you brought up I'm on the web, I'm on the tablet, right? Two different sessions, two different cookies, but it's still Jens because you're Jens, you're authenticated. That's a stitch. Now I've got a cookie session here, a cookie session here that I can stitch together to say Jens was doing this here. He was continuing his journey here, which is still important, even though it's a different device. And maybe the fact that you were on two devices is important, right? But then you call, and now you've got a phone number in the mix, or you email from a totally different place. And, maybe it's part of our customer profile, maybe it's not. But oftentimes what I find is those disparate pieces, the phone number, the email address, the cookie, right? Even for an authenticated user, those are in different places. And those aren't brought together where we can have that understanding of where Jens has been. And again, if I knew that as a company, that you were trying to complete this journey and you were in 3 different spots, how awesome would it be when you call in that the person answering the phone says, "Hi, Jens, I see that you were trying to do this. I can help you complete that right now. Are you on your tablet?" Incredible.
Yeah. I know, again, that has a lot to do with the European perspective on that. It looks, at first glance, it looks a bit scary because of the depth of information that's already available. But if you really go deeper into it and you understand that's actually not the person it's only the behavior then it gets a different flavor.
Yes.
Let me stick to that subject a little bit. I learned in the past couple of months what Laura did, for example, to enhance the customer experience is, for example, adding the opportunity to make business via phone without talking to anyone. That's voice response and that kind of stuff. And then you can, of course, go to our website and there's a payment portal that you can use and you don't have to talk to anyone. Or if you want to talk to someone, but maybe not a person, you can go to our bot. So 3 aspects that help to get more business done on a digital level. And I'd be curious to learn what's coming up. So what is the next trick that you magicians have for us?
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think everyone's buzz is around generative AI, right? And what's interesting about that, and if you think about what generative AI is doing is, large language models, a greater understanding, allowing us to really interact with artificial intelligence much more freely. That's very good. At the end of the day, it still comes down to what's behind. And what I mean by that is knowledge. So to your point, right, we can do so much without having to know it's Jens, right? If you have difficulty or failure with any of those modes of payment, to be able to understand that and improve it, because users are frustrated if they fail at a certain point. How systematically are we learning and listening about that failure to be able to improve it so that that journey is improved for everyone, right? But it's behind the scenes is where a lot of times where the failure happens is that the bot understands what we're asking, just doesn't have the answer, or the answer isn't tagged or coded in a way that it's able to be surfaced properly. And so we talk about all the magic, and it's incredibly exciting. And along with the magic, you'll hear the term hallucination. Where now this doesn't happen day in, day out, but some of the real cutting edge generative AI models have this thing called hallucination, where they're filling in the blanks, if you will, right? So I know data point A, I know data point B, but you're asking me data point Q, so I'm going to imagine the path to that. That's essentially what some of the large language models are doing. And in that process of getting to Q, they're just making stuff up. Right there. I mean, the whole world of information is out there. They're taking that and saying, you know what, you should read these books. The only problem is those books have never been written. They should have been, but they weren't. And so what happens is it's the interaction of this magical technology to listen and understand, and then the big path between that and action, which is surfacing the answer. If I have problems making a payment, artificial intelligence should sense that, right? It should use generative AI to take in information, summarize, and hopefully get to the knowledge and the piece of information or a little video that says, here, try this. In real time. Now I get to my destination. I don't have to call. I don't have to, spend more time out of my day and my life. That's where, the magic in technology. And again, I'm maybe not the right person. Maybe you wanted somebody more technology, but all my purpose is to get from technology to people. And that's where I always gravitate towards. So generative AI is everywhere, right? Everyone talks about that. Leveraging that for people on the customer side, on the employee side, is where the application, at least in our space, is.
So that means it's not so much that you expect new channels or whatever kind of technology to evolve, but you believe that with artificial intelligence, what happens is that the existing channels improve, have less obstacles, are more personal, with that gain more trust, and maybe just create a smooth, flawless, warm, personal experience. Is that what you say?
Totally. And guiding me toward the right channel. If I start on a channel that's not optimal for this particular need, wouldn't it be great to be coached? You know what? You're not going to be successful, right? I think I know what you're trying to do, and I don't think you're going to be successful here. To cut down the amount of wasted time you have, I really suggest you connect with this person, right? How awesome would that be to have that assistance at that level? Now, one thing you said, Jens, that sparked something in me. I don't necessarily believe we're out of channels yet. So when we think of the metaverse, and this is one of those things where I think companies are just starting to figure out, and again, it depends on participation. If a new generation decides that, you know what, I really prefer living in a world where I can touch something and I can smell the air, and I don't want to sit with a headset or whatever on in a virtual world, that would change that whole thing. But if we do have participation in a virtual world, and will we have virtual events, and will we have virtual experiences? That is very much going to be a channel, because when we're in that world, we're going to want to reach out to all of our relationships, and that will be a different thing. And so then you'll have to think about, what is your avatar going to be in this virtual world, Jens? What are you going to represent yourself as when you can represent yourself as anything? So I do see that as a channel. What I also see is augmented. Right. So we are in the real world, but we're augmented with additional, information. That will be another, maybe not, it could be a gateway into a channel. The communication channel will probably be what we think about traditionally through chat and things like that. But it's those things that I do see things happening as far as the worlds that we interact in and the way we interact. So I would say, on the AI side, that's one thing of how that all will exist inside these new channels as well. You can bet on it. But that's that. I do see that probably an emerging channel would be that stuff.
Mm. I have one. Let's see if it's a final question, but I have one more, and that is that is probably that might be a bit provocative. So far, we are talking about experience that is aiming at consumers doing something, right?
Uh-huh.
If I'm Zalando or Amazon, it's about purchasing something. If it's Lowell, it's about paying your debt, right? But if you look at it from a consumer perspective for a second, it might be wise to not buy a thing because for example, you don't have the money right now. So how about that perspective in a customer journey? Shouldn't there also be some sort of you better think twice before you buy?
Love that. I love that, Jens. And this is what I'm seeing now a little bit more, at least here, is I'm getting applications asking me if I'm willing to share my data across companies. That's a big deal. Not necessarily, and again, it doesn't necessarily have to be me, right? It just could be data points.
Mm-hmm.
But what that does is opens up something like, and I think you and I may have talked about this. What if Lowell was kind of a credit guardian, a financial status and stability guardian who's sitting on my shoulder as I live my life in the world and saying, Charlie, it's like the angels and devils, I guess. so it's obviously the angel, right? And so the angel is saying, Charlie, here's your current situation. If you go down this path, you will need to adjust your life in these ways. How awesome would that be? Maybe. For some, it would say, I don't want that. You know what? You don't have to. We can't solve it for everyone. But there are folks, I know I get alerts and things from the companies that I participate with. Some are noise, but some are very helpful. Hey, this payment is due. What's going to happen if you don't pay? You know what? It completely slipped my mind. Please tell me 2 days before it's due so I don't have finance charges. Fantastic. Simple. Mm-hmm. But this idea of a future state, Jens, that we did talk about, I remember now, of, hey, I'm here with you. That's a very powerful promise that could warrant additional consent. So yeah, I do think that's an incredible possibility.
Now, I've been always a big fan of science fiction. I read science fiction books throughout my youth, very often. Is that what you just described still science fiction, or how close are we to a solution like that?
I think a lot of that scenario that we described depends on that cross-platform stuff. Because I think, as I think about my financial relationships, they would learn of that. There is a certain level that they could tell me. Like, obviously, if there are large purchases, or I think about my credit card relationships, if there are large purchases or I'm getting close to my credit limits, I do get those, right? And we probably do that today. That's a form of this. I think to be able to monitor in real time, is it possible from a technology perspective? The answer is yes. Is the data available to us where we could make intelligent statements like that? And again, cross platforms. If I'm on Amazon, can I get visibility into that? That's probably the bridge that we can't cross yet. I have seen some cross-platform stuff going on. Amazon is a good example of being able to cross platforms, right? Some of their membership benefits are good for me. On the other side, there are some visibility things that I'm giving them that are incredibly valuable to them. And it's exactly what you're describing. So can it happen? Certainly. Will it happen? Depends on the company's ability to see and listen, the participants' consent, and their perception of the value that it brings. Those are the things that are going to get in the way, but it's not technology that's going to get in the way.
Mm-hmm. So there's one final, because I like, obviously, the picture of the devil and the angel on my shoulder, and I can easily imagine to have whatever Google, Apple, whatever glasses, augmented glasses, that would exactly provide that, a picture of a devil and an angel on my shoulder. So my final question then is, for you as an experienced developer, innovation magician.
You're giving me too much credit, Jens.
What is the next fun thing you believe that's going to happen? So really, in not so much the question, is it helpful, but does it also ring that bell, or, have that touch of entertainment and being fun, so it has a chance to really make and hit the market?
Yeah, it's interesting. There are several different things I think about when you describe that. There are some things that are very much here and now. We partnered with a company on just mindfulness, right? So mindfulness is an experiential thing, right? Think about contact center environment, right? Usually very, very high pace, a lot of, kind of fire hose kind of, traffic coming at you day in, day out. And I worked for an insurance company. And so when there was a large hurricane or a catastrophic event, it was incredibly stressful for the reps. And one of the leaders came to me and said, Charlie, our reps are so stressed out when these things happen. Is there a way that you could, in these barrage of interactions, that you could surface a cartoon for 30 seconds? And I'm like, what do you think? And I don't know if you're familiar with SpongeBob SquarePants, but a very respected artist here in the States. Mm-hmm. Could you do a SpongeBob SquarePants video? Yeah. And so think about that, right? So we're breaking up this incredibly stressful environment with a little video that says, hey, you're doing a great job. Thank you for everything you're doing. That's fun. Have a pause for mindfulness. Take this survey. How are you feeling? Let's check in. Let's take a minute to center and get focused. And, use that information perhaps to, identify where somebody's really, developing some, some attitudes that are concerning for themselves. And then finally, the last piece. So there's a lot we can do with media and technology to encourage and make the day more fun. I've seen and experienced things even on a consumer side that break up what I was expecting. I was expecting to go through a traditional voice system. And I'm going through the menu options, and no one likes to listen to the menu options.
No.
And number 4 was, if you'd like to hear a duck quack, press 4. And do you think I pressed 4? Absolutely, I pressed 4. And that's all it did, quack. And you know what? That made me smile. So is it cutting edge? No, not really. Is it creative and fun and it makes it more entertaining? Absolutely. I'll give you one more. So we think about the technology of customer attributes and routing like-minded people to like-minded resources to develop this relationship. I was in a big meeting with a bunch of leaders at an international bank, and they asked me for my presentation ahead of time, which I don't like to do because it breaks the surprises. But I sent it, and I got into the room, and they're like, I think you had a slide that wasn't supposed to be in there. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, there was this one slide and has like this giant ogre or something, and it says World of Warcraft on it. And we don't know what that has to do with our business at all. And so I'm like, we had to look it up on the internet to see it's some gaming system. I said, yeah, it is. Oh no, it's very relevant to this conversation. And so I proceeded to tell them, look, you have millions and millions of customers. Out of those millions and millions of customers, you're going to have people that love World of Warcraft. And then you have hundreds of thousands of agents. Out of those hundreds of thousands of agents, you have agents that love World of Warcraft. And so if you've got a level 27 Death Knight consumer calling in or interacting with the bank, and you've got a level 15 paladin in your contact center, wouldn't it be great to connect those two people together for this next conversation? And, is that entertaining? Could they be aware that Jens is a level 27 Death Knight? Wow, Jens, that's incredible. The dedication you've given to the platform. I'm a level 15 paladin. It changes the conversation and the relationship. So again, Jens, technology is cool. There's a lot of cool things coming. Absolutely. My world and my brain is about, okay, how do we take all that cool stuff and make this experience that's memorable and fun, like you said?
I know I promised it was the last, but I have one final. I'm very sorry, but I have to.
This is fun.
I have to ask it. I know that there is technology that can measure your stress level by audio recording. Is that something you're already considering? And if so, how?
Yeah, there are several markers of escalation, if you will, in a conversation. You think about things like crosstalk, if people are, interrupting each other. Certainly the tonal things are part of it. So that is existing technology that you can look at sentiment. You can look at, what's being said. What I really love being in this space, we used to survey people. We used to survey people after the fact. Now in the contact center, and again, this could be anonymized. We don't need to know that it was Jens unless we feel that it's important that if Jens had a negative sentiment, we want to reach out and make sure he's okay. That's a different thing. But at a sentiment level to trend, maybe resource interaction behavior or just voice of the customer. Now we're through analytics on the recordings and actually looking at what's being said, we can actually analyze the voice of the customer at scale. So we don't have to rely on like a 3% survey participation or anything like that. We can take those insights, not just for sentiment, right? That's important, but also, I don't understand this campaign. This motion or this email was a nuisance. Mm-hmm. All right. Right? We could feed that to marketing, with that in product development. There's a lot we can do with the true voice of the customer that probably they would pay big money to have those insights. So I agree with you. Sentiment analysis is something that can be done in a number of different ways. But in addition to that is the true voice of the customer. So if there is distress and we have that relationship that we want to cultivate, and even just to say, how did this interaction go, right? To just be proactive. Again, like you said, something very important. Everything we talked about in the beginning was kind of reactionary. The consumer was taking action. I would say equally through these insights, we should be carefully taking action to reach out and make sure people are okay, make sure they're aware. And that's part of the motion. It should be both ways. But we can leverage something like a negative sentiment to make sure that person is okay.
Mm. So, concluding, maybe, I was asking because we have so many people in our call centers, and every now and then they have customers yelling at them. And in my vision, it would just be a perfect solution if they could just switch to a bot that is specializing on calming down yelling people. So once they have quit yelling, they could go back to business and you can switch on the real person again. So
interesting. Yeah. I have been in technology long enough where I'm thinking about how I would do that. And some of the things I used to say, I could do that, But here are a couple of reasons why I would think maybe we don't want to do that. But I like that idea, Jens. It's like the empathetic person that I understand how that must make you feel. That bot would have to be pretty good, because if I'm really upset and I then find out you're sending me to the pacifier bot,
oh, it's worse.
I'm going to be off the charts then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally right. Yeah.
But, think about what we're seeing. So again, is technology cool? Absolutely. You think about things like deep fakes, and the technology is there to take Jens, just your voice sample, and make it pretty much, you couldn't tell if it was Jens or the deep fake. So then, to your point, could you, from a technology perspective, substitute the sounding board bot with sounding just like Jens, and then when you detect the sentiment going down and everybody calming down, you go back to real Jens? The answer is probably in the not too distant future, absolutely yes. I find that sometimes people are struggling with, do I make the bot, do I give the appearance that the bot is a human? Mm-hmm. And some people are really wrestling with that from a brand perspective. I'm not going to pretend like this is a representative. I'm going to tell you this is a bot for some of those reasons. And so again, it's not the technology, it's the experience we're trying to design and the way people would feel about it that really, for me, that's where the true answer lives.
Well, thank you so much, Charlie. It was, again, we had a brief conversation before, and I'm totally happy that we did it again, and this time also recorded. Thanks for the insights. I love talking about this, and I can easily imagine to do this again at a point in time when there's new technology maybe on the horizon. Thank you very much, Charlie. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Jens. This was a great conversation. And the next time we get together, we'll have to either put the disclaimer in that we are deep fakes of each other or not.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I can at least promise I'm the real Jens.
That could be a thing, right? Are we really talking to Jens, or are we just, Oh, it's fascinating.